Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the massive space station grow larger on his screen. He had seen many impressive sights during his 20 years in space, but nothing like this. The station was huge, bigger than Earth's moon, and it sparkled with lights from a dozen different alien races. "Sir, we're getting another message from the station," said Lieutenant Karen Davis from her position at the communications desk. Her voice was nervous, and Jake could understand why. This was humanity's first contact with the Galactic Space Council, and everyone aboard the ship felt the weight of representing their entire species. "Put it through," Jake said, straightening his uniform. The main screen flickered and showed a tall, crystal-like being that seemed to glow with its own light. Its voice was cold and mechanical when it spoke. "Human vessel, you will dock at Bay 77 Alpha. Your delegation will be escorted immediately to the council chambers. Do not deviate from your assigned path." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all good people, but they looked worried. He couldn't blame them. "Well, that was friendly," muttered Commander Lisa Carter from beside him. Lisa was Earth's top military strategist and had been chosen to accompany this mission. She was a small woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Jake had worked with her before and trusted her judgment completely. "They didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat," Jake agreed. He turned to his pilot. "Take us in, Lieutenant Ross. Nice and easy." The docking process went smoothly, though Jake noticed the alien technology was far beyond anything humans had developed. The docking clamps moved with perfect precision, and the airlock sealed without even a whisper of escaping air. When the doors opened, they were met by two guards that looked like they were made of living metal. "Follow," one of them said in perfect English, though its voice sounded like grinding gears. Jake, Lisa, and their small diplomatic team followed the guards through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The station was incredible. The walls were made of some kind of material that shifted colors as they walked, and the ceiling showed a perfect view of the stars outside. Other aliens passed them in the hallways, creatures that Jake had only imagined in his wildest dreams. There were beings made of pure energy that floated past like ghosts. Others looked like giant insects walking on their back legs. One group appeared to be living plants that moved with slow, deliberate steps. Each species ignored the humans completely as if they were not worth noticing. "Charming bunch," Lisa whispered to Jake as they walked. The guards led them to a massive chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the swirling colors of the galaxy's center. 12 seats were arranged in a circle, each one designed for a different type of alien. Most of the seats were already occupied. The largest seat held a creature that looked like a mountain of crystal. Its faceted surface reflected the lights in the room, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. This was Speaker Thex Val of the Veltharians, though Jake didn't know that yet. Floating near another seat was a being made of pure energy, constantly shifting between different colors. It had no solid form, but Jake could feel its attention like heat from a fire. This was one of the Zephyrite, creatures that had evolved beyond the need for physical bodies. Other aliens filled the remaining seats. Some Jake could understand, like the ones that looked almost human but with blue skin and 4 arms. Others were completely beyond his understanding, like the creature that seemed to be made of living shadow, or the one that appeared to be a collection of floating geometric shapes. "Humans," the crystal being spoke, and its voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "You stand before the Galactic Space Council, governing body of civilized space. I am Speaker Thex Val." Jake stepped forward. He had prepared for this moment, practiced his speech dozens of times. "Honored Speaker, I am Captain Jake Morrison, representing the people of Earth. We come in peace, hoping to establish friendly relations with the galactic community." A sound like breaking glass came from the crystal being, and Jake realized it was laughing. Several other aliens made sounds that might have been amusement in their own languages. "You misunderstand your situation, human," Thexval said. "You are not here to establish relations, you are here to answer for your crimes." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Crimes?" What crimes? The energy being spoke next, its voice like wind through a canyon. You have violated the cosmic non-interference doctrine. Your species has expanded too rapidly, too aggressively through space. You have disturbed the natural order. Lisa stepped up beside Jake. With respect, we were not aware of any such doctrine. No one told us these rules existed. Ignorance is not an excuse, said another alien, this one looking like a giant spider made of metal. Your kind has spread to over 50 star systems in less than 2 centuries. Such rapid expansion is forbidden. Thexval raised one crystal appendage, and the chamber fell silent. But that is not your greatest crime, humans. We have reports of strange ships in your space, vessels that appear and disappear without using any known form of faster-than-light travel, ships that seem to phase in and out of reality itself. Jake tried to keep his face neutral, but he felt Lisa tense beside him. They both knew what the aliens were talking about, though it was supposed to be humanity's greatest secret. We demand to know about these void ships, the energy being continued. What dark technologies have you developed? What forces are you tampering with? I don't know what you're talking about, Jake said, though he could hear the lie in his own voice. The crystal being's laugh was like an avalanche. Do not insult our intelligence, human. Our sensors have detected impossible energy signatures in your space, ships that exist partially outside normal space-time. You will tell us about these dark technologies or face the consequences. Thexval stood, and the chamber filled with a sound like singing crystal. The Galactic Space Council hereby orders humanity to retreat to your home system immediately. You will accept permanent quarantine and cease all space exploration beyond your own star. You have violated laws older than your species, and you will face corrective action if you refuse. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. You're talking about the imprisonment of our entire species. We are talking about maintaining galactic stability, the spider-like alien said. Your kind is dangerous, unpredictable. You have technologies that should not exist. You will comply, or be made to comply, the energy being pulsed brighter. You have 72 standard hours to begin your withdrawal. Any human ships found outside your home system after that time will be destroyed. Lisa stepped forward, her military training taking over. And if we refuse? Thexval's crystal body flared with light. Then the combined fleets of 12 civilizations will ensure your compliance. Do not test our resolve, humans. Species have been eliminated from existence for far less than what you have done. Jake looked around the chamber at the alien faces, staring down at them. Some showed curiosity, others contempt, but all showed the same certainty that humanity would bow to their demands. We need time to consider your ultimatum, Jake said carefully. You have 72 hours. Thexval repeated. Use them wisely, this council session is concluded. As the guards escorted them back to their ship, Jake walked in stunned silence. Humanity had reached for the stars only to find they were controlled by powers beyond imagination. But as they reached the docking bay, Lisa touched his arm and whispered 5 words that changed everything. Protocol 7. Prepare the Ghost Fleet. General Ryan Collins sat in his underground office 3 miles beneath the Colorado mountains. The message from Admiral Carter had arrived 30 minutes ago, and he was still staring at the screen. Protocol 7. Those 2 words meant humanity was facing total destruction. He pressed a button on his desk, and the wall behind him opened to reveal a hidden elevator. Ryan stepped inside and descended even deeper into the mountain. When the doors opened, he walked into a facility that officially did not exist. General Collins, said Dr. Elena Rodriguez as she hurried toward him. Elena was a small woman with tired eyes and gray hair, though she was only 45 years old. The stress of running the Phantom Project had aged her quickly. I got your emergency signal. Is it time? The aliens know about our ghost ships, Ryan said without introduction. They're giving us 3 days to surrender or face complete destruction. Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. 20 years of secrecy, and it comes down to this. They walked together through corridors lined with laboratories and testing chambers. Scientists and technicians hurried past them, all working on projects that could change the course of human history. This was Deep Space Command's most classified facility, where humanity's greatest secret had been born. "Tell me again how this all started," Ryan said as they reached the main laboratory. Elena smiled sadly. "You know the story as well as I do, but I'll tell it anyway." She led him to a large window that looked down into a testing chamber. Inside, a strange black field flickered in and out of existence. 20 years ago, Dr. Nathan Price and I were trying to create a new type of engine. We were working with exotic matter, trying to bend space-time in small ways. Dr. Nathan Price looked up from his computer console and waved at them through the window. He was a tall, thin man who always looked like he had not slept in days. Next, to him, Commander Amy Foster was running calculations on another screen. Amy was a former space pilot who had become an engineer when an accident grounded her from active flight duty. Nathan was running a test on a piece of dark matter we had collected from deep space, Elena continued. The experiment went wrong, or maybe it went exactly right. Instead of destroying the lab, the dark matter created a stable field that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Ryan watched the black field pulse and shift. Even after all these years, it still made him uncomfortable to look at. And that's when you discovered what it could do. "We put a probe into the field," Elena said. "It disappeared completely from all our sensors, but we could still control it through quantum entanglement. The probe could move through solid matter, like it was not there. It could appear and disappear at will. We had accidentally discovered how to phase objects into dark matter space." They moved to another window that showed a small spacecraft sitting in a testing bay. The ship looked normal except for the strange black coating that covered its hull. "The first test flights were disasters," Elena admitted. "The pilots experienced severe hallucinations, memory loss, and complete mental breakdowns. We lost 3 good people before we understood what was happening." Ryan remembered those early days. The families asking questions about their missing loved ones. The cover stories about training accidents. The guilt that still kept him awake at night. "But then we found the Wraiths," Elena continued. "People with a specific genetic combination that lets them survive in dark matter space. Only about 1 in 10,000 humans has the right genes, and even then the process is dangerous." Commander Amy Foster left her console and joined them at the window. "General Collins, we've been monitoring the situation. Major Sam Torres sent us a report from the outer colonies. He engaged a small alien fleet yesterday." "What happened?" Ryan asked. Amy's face was grim. "Complete defeat. Our best ships, our most advanced weapons, and they destroyed us without even trying. Their energy shield stopped everything we fired at them. Their weapons cut through our armor like paper." Ryan felt his heart sink. He had hoped that conventional human forces might have a chance against the aliens, but Amy's report destroyed that hope. "How many ships did Torres lose?" he asked. 12 destroyers and 6 cruisers, Amy replied. "Torres barely escaped in a damaged frigate. The aliens were playing with us, General. They could have destroyed his entire fleet in minutes if they wanted to." Elena put her hand on Ryan's shoulder. "That's why we built the Ghost Fleet. We always knew this day might come." They walked deeper into the facility, past laboratories, where scientists worked on dark matter technology. In one room, researchers studied the psychological effects of dark space exposure. In another, engineers worked on improving the phase generators that allowed ships to enter dark matter space. "Show me the pilots," Ryan said. Elena led him to a special wing of the facility where the Wraith pilots lived. These were humanity's most valuable and most damaged people. The genetic modifications and dark matter exposure that allowed them to pilot the ghost ships also changed them in fundamental ways. Major Kate Sullivan sat in a common room, staring at nothing. She was one of the first successful Wraith pilots, but the cost was clear. Her eyes held a distant look, as if she was seeing things that existed in other dimensions. When she spoke, her voice sounded like it was coming from far away. "General Collins," she said without looking at him. "I can feel them out there, the aliens. Their minds burn so bright in normal space, but they cannot see us when we phase. We are ghosts to them." Ryan sat down across from her. Kate had been a normal fighter pilot once with a husband and 2 children. The dark matter exposure had taken that away from her. Her family could not understand what she had become, and she could no longer relate to people who existed only in normal space. Kate, we need the Ghost Fleet ready to deploy. Can your people handle a full combat mission? Kate's eyes focused on him for a moment, and he saw the woman she used to be. We've been ready for 20 years, General. We knew this was why we were created. To save humanity when no one else could. Other Wraith pilots drifted through the common room like living ghosts. There were only 47 of them in total, each one a volunteer who had given up their humanity to become something else. They moved differently than normal people, as if they were not entirely present in the physical world. Elena watched them with sad eyes. They're our greatest achievement and our greatest tragedy. We created them to save our species, but we had to destroy part of what makes them human to do it. Ryan's communicator buzzed, and President Karen Walsh's face appeared on the screen. She was calling from the White House Situation Room, and he could see the stress on her face. General Collins, what's the status of our secret assets? The Ghost Fleet is ready to deploy, Madam President. 12 ships, each crewed by our best Wraith pilots. They can phase into dark matter space and become completely invisible to alien sensors. President Walsh was quiet for a long moment. And the cost? Ryan looked at the Wraith pilots around him, these people who had sacrificed their humanity for their species. The cost is everything, Madam President, but it's the only chance we have. Then authorize deployment, she said. May God help us all. As the communication ended, Elena activated the facility's alert system. Throughout the underground complex, lights flashed and alarms sounded. The Ghost Fleet was going to war. Major. Kate Sullivan stood up from her chair, her eyes now sharp and focused. It's time, she said to the other Wraith pilots. Time to show the galaxy what humanity can do when we fight for our survival. Ryan watched as the pilots moved toward their ships, these broken people who had become humanity's last hope. In 12 hours, the Ghost Fleet would reach the Alien Council station. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had secrets darker than they could imagine. The war for human freedom was about to begin, fought by warriors who existed between dimensions, piloting ships that could touch the very fabric of space itself. And somewhere in dark matter space, forces older than civilization were beginning to take notice of the disturbance humanity was about to create. The alien fleets moved through space like a storm of metal and fire. Admiral Fletcher Hayes stood on the bridge of the massive ship Eternal Dominion, watching hundreds of alien vessels form attack formations. He was a tall creature with 4 arms and blue skin, one of the Arctonian race that had served the Galactic Council for over 1,000 years. Report on human military strength, Fletcher ordered his tactical officer. Scans show approximately 200 human vessels scattered across 50 star systems, the officer replied. Primitive nuclear weapons, basic energy shields, and simple railgun technology. They will offer minimal resistance. Fletcher nodded with satisfaction. This would be easier than he had expected. In his long career, he had never seen the Council use overwhelming force against such a weak enemy. 12 different alien species had contributed their best warships to this operation. The humans would surrender quickly once they saw the hopeless nature of their situation. The first target was Proxima Station, humanity's outermost military base. Captain Rick Stone commanded the Human Defense Force there, and he watched the approaching alien fleet with growing dread. His tactical displays showed energy signatures beyond anything in human databases. Sir, we count over 300 alien ships, reported Lieutenant Dan Murphy from the sensor station. They're all showing power readings 10 times higher than our biggest ships. Rick looked around his command center at the faces of his crew. They were scared, but they were ready to fight. These were professional soldiers who knew they were probably going to die, but they would make the aliens pay a price for human space. All ships, this is Captain Stone, he broadcast to his small fleet. We knew this day might come. We're going to show these aliens that humans don't surrender without a fight. For Earth. The battle began badly for the humans. Rick's ships fired everything they had at the approaching aliens, but their nuclear missiles exploded harmlessly against energy shields. The railgun rounds that had torn through asteroid pirates bounced off alien armor like raindrops. The alien response was devastating. Beams of pure energy sliced through human ships like knives through paper. Matter disruptor weapons made entire vessels simply ceased to exist, leaving nothing behind but empty space. In 20 minutes, Rick's fleet of 30 ships was reduced to burning wreckage. Rick's own ship, the destroyer Courage, was dying around him. Half his crew was dead, and the other half was fighting fires and trying to keep life support running. As alien ships moved in for the final kill, Rick sent one last message to Earth. "This is Proxima Station. We have been overrun. The aliens are too strong. Tell Earth we tried our best. Tell them to remember us." Admiral Fletcher watched the destruction of the human fleet with professional interest. The humans had fought bravely, he would give them that. But bravery meant nothing against superior technology. He was already planning the next phase of the operation when his tactical officer made an urgent report. "Admiral, we're detecting strange energy readings throughout the fleet." "What kind of readings?" Fletcher asked. "Unknown, sir. The signatures don't match any known technology. They seem to be coming from empty space." Fletcher frowned. His sensors showed nothing but empty space around the fleet, but the energy readings were definitely there. Before he could investigate further, reality itself seemed to tear open. The USS Phantom materialized inside the Eternal Dominion's shields like a ghost becoming solid. Major Kate Sullivan sat in the pilot's chair, her consciousness split between normal space and the dark matter dimension. Her ship existed in both realities simultaneously, allowing it to pass through solid matter like it was not there. "Target locked," she whispered, her voice carrying across dimensions. "Firing dark matter torpedoes." The weapons she fired were not made of normal matter. They were concentrated dark matter given form and purpose, existing partially outside the physical universe. When they struck the Eternal Dominion's core systems, they simply erased everything they touched from existence. Admiral Fletcher had one moment to realize his ship was dying, before the massive dreadnought imploded. The Eternal Dominion, pride of the Arctonian fleet, folded in on itself and disappeared, leaving behind only confused alien survivors floating in escape pods. Throughout the alien fleet, chaos erupted as 11 more phantom ships appeared from dark matter space. These vessels moved like living shadows, phasing in and out of reality at will. They struck vital systems with surgical precision before vanishing back into the spaces between dimensions. The Veltharian crystal ships tried to fight back, but their energy weapons passed harmlessly through targets that existed partially outside normal space-time. The Zephyrite energy beings attempted to disrupt the phantom ships with their reality manipulation powers, but the dark matter technology was beyond their understanding. Captain Bob Turner piloted the USS Shadow through the heart of a crystalline super dreadnought. His ship's dark matter field allowed it to ignore the alien vessel's shields and armor completely. Bob had been a normal fighter pilot once, but the genetic modifications and dark matter exposure had changed him into something that could navigate spaces that didn't technically exist. "This is Shadow to all ghost ships," he transmitted across quantum channels that only the Wraith pilots could access. "The aliens can't touch us while we're phased. Hit them hard and fast, then fade back into dark space." Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the battle from her underground facility on Earth. Screens around her showed the biometric data from all 12 Wraith pilots, and what she saw worried her deeply. The dark matter exposure was taking its toll faster than expected. Major Kate Sullivan's brain patterns were becoming increasingly erratic. The woman who had once been a loving mother now existed primarily in dark matter space, her consciousness scattered across multiple dimensions. Her thoughts moved at the speed of quantum entanglement, but her humanity was slipping away with each passing minute. "Kate's neural patterns are destabilizing," Dr. Nathan Price reported from his monitoring station. "She's experiencing severe dimensional displacement syndrome. We might lose her completely." Elena watched the data with a heavy heart. Each Wraith pilot was precious, irreplaceable. There were only 47 humans in existence who could pilot the ghost ships, and they were burning out their minds to save their species. Can we pull her back? Elena asked. Nathan shook his head. She's too deep in dark space now. Her consciousness exists more in the dark matter dimension than in our reality. If we try to force her back, we might kill her. On her ship, Kate Sullivan felt her grip on normal reality slipping away. She could see the battle happening in dozens of different timelines simultaneously. In some realities, humanity won. In others, Earth burned under alien bombardment. But in all of them, the Wraith pilots paid the ultimate price for their species' freedom. I can feel them, she whispered, her voice echoing across dimensions. The other versions of myself. We're all fighting the same battle in different realities. We're all dying for the same cause. Admiral Fletcher's replacement, a spider-like creature named Commander Vextar, desperately tried to coordinate a defense against enemies that could not be fought with conventional tactics. His ships fired wildly at empty space, hoping to hit the phantom vessels by luck rather than skill. Deploy the quantum mines, he ordered. If we can't see them, we'll fill space with enough explosives to destroy anything that moves. But the ghost ships moved through the mines like they were not there, existing in spaces where normal explosives could not reach. The alien fleet found itself fighting shadows, battling enemies that appeared and disappeared without warning. Lieutenant Sarah Brooks piloted the USS Wraith through a formation of Zephyrite energy ships. Her vessel's dark matter generators allowed it to absorb the aliens' energy attacks and convert them into power for her own systems. She had been dead for 3 minutes during one dark matter experiment, and the experience had changed her in ways that doctors still did not understand. This is Wraith to Ghost Leader, she transmitted. My systems are showing massive energy buildup in the alien fleet. They're preparing something big. Kate Sullivan's fragmented consciousness detected it too. The aliens were charging weapons that had not been used in thousands of years, devices designed to anchor reality itself and force the phantom ships back into normal space-time. All ghost ships, prepare for emergency phase-out, she ordered, though her voice now sounded like it was coming from very far away. They're going to try to trap us in normal space. As ancient alien weapons began to distort the fabric of reality around them, the Wraith pilots faced their greatest challenge yet. They had shocked the galaxy with their impossible technology, but now the aliens were fighting back with powers that had conquered civilizations before humans ever looked at the stars. The battle for humanity's survival was just beginning, and the ghosts in the machine were running out of places to hide. Deep space trembled as more alien ships arrived from across the galaxy. These were not the regular council fleets, but ancient vessels that had been sleeping in hidden bases for thousands of years. The Arcanian mind ships looked like living brains, floating in space, their psychic powers reaching across star systems. The crystalline super-dreadnoughts were bigger than space stations, their diamond hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. Commander Vextar watched these legendary ships take positions around his battered fleet. He had called for help after losing over half his vessels to the human ghost ships, and the Council had responded by awakening weapons that had not been used since the Great Purge 3,000 years ago. Activate the reality anchors, he ordered, his communications officer. If these humans want to hide in dark space, we will drag them back into our reality. Massive devices emerged from the ancient ships, machines that looked like mechanical spiders made of pure crystal. These reality anchors had been designed by the first galactic civilization to prevent other species from using dimensional technology. They sent waves of force through space-time itself, making it impossible for anything to exist partially outside normal reality. Major Kate Sullivan felt the change immediately. Her consciousness, which had been spread across multiple dimensions, suddenly snapped back into her physical body like a rubber band. The pain was incredible, like having her soul torn apart and forced back together. All ghost ships were being pulled back into normal space, she managed to say through gritted teeth. The aliens have some kind of dimensional lock. We can't phase anymore. The USS Phantom suddenly became solid inside a cluster of alien vessels. Without its dark matter protection, the ship was now vulnerable to enemy weapons. Energy beams struck its hull, and Kate felt her ship dying around her. Other Phantom ships throughout the fleet faced the same problem. Captain Bob Turner's USS Shadow materialized in the middle of an Arcanian mine ship and immediately came under psychic attack. The alien's mental powers invaded his thoughts, trying to drive him insane with visions of terror and despair. Bob screamed as images of Earth burning filled his mind, but his training as a Wraith pilot helped him fight back. Years of existing, partially in dark matter space, had taught him to resist mental invasion. He fired his remaining dark matter torpedoes at point-blank range, destroying both his ship and the alien mine ship in a flash of twisted space-time. On Earth, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched her monitors with growing horror. The biometric readings from the Wraith pilots were showing complete system failures. Their minds, already damaged by dark matter exposure, could not handle being forced back into normal space so violently. "We're losing them," Dr. Nathan Price reported, his voice full of despair. 7 pilots are already brain-dead. The others are experiencing complete neural collapse. Elena stared at the screen showing the vital signs of humanity's greatest heroes. These people had volunteered to give up their humanity to save their species, and now they were dying alone in the cold of space, their minds shattered by forces beyond understanding. Major Kate Sullivan's ship was falling apart, but she managed to send one final transmission back to Earth. Her voice was weak and broken, but her words carried the weight of absolute determination. "Tell them we paid the price for freedom in blood and souls," she whispered. "Tell them we chose this fate willingly because humanity deserves to reach for the stars." But even as the Ghost Fleet died, something else was stirring in the depths of space. The reality anchors were sending waves through dimensions that had been quiet for millions of years, and ancient systems were beginning to respond. Commander Amy Foster, monitoring the battle from a research station near Jupiter, suddenly detected massive energy signatures appearing throughout the galaxy. Her instruments showed objects the size of moons moving at impossible speeds heading toward the battle. "Dr. Rodriguez, you need to see this," she called over the communication system. "Something big is coming. Multiple contacts, all showing energy readings that don't make sense." Elena looked at Amy's data and felt her blood turn cold. The signatures were unlike anything in human or alien databases, but they all shared one common element. They were partially composed of dark matter, just like the Phantom ships. The first of the ancient constructs arrived at the battle site like a mountain of black metal and crystal. It was larger than any ship ever built, its surface covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. This was a Dark Sentinel, one of the automated guardians left behind by the predecessors, the galaxy's first spacefaring civilization. Speaker Thexaval, watching the battle from the safety of the council station, felt fear for the first time in centuries. His crystalline body actually trembled as he recognized what was approaching. "Impossible," he whispered. "The Dark Sentinels have been dormant for 3 million years. What could have awakened them?" The answer came from his science officer, a floating geometric shape that served as the station's chief analyst. "The human dark matter technology, Speaker. Our reality anchors have created dimensional disturbances across half the galaxy. The Sentinels detect this as a threat to universal stability." More Dark Sentinels emerged from hyperspace, their ancient hulls scarred by eons of travel through the void between stars. These were the guardians left behind by a civilization that had mastered dark matter technology so completely that they had transcended physical existence. They had built these machines to prevent other species from making the same mistakes they had made. Captain Jake Morrison, still aboard the council station as a prisoner, watched through a viewport as the massive constructs surrounded the entire fleet. Alien and human ships alike looked like toys next to these ancient titans. "What are those things?" he asked one of his guards. The crystalline guard's light flickered with what might have been fear. "The predecessors, the first race to achieve galactic civilization. They discovered dark matter technology long before any current species existed, and they learned why it should never be used." One of the Dark Sentinels sent out a transmission that reached every ship in the system. The voice was ancient beyond measure, speaking in harmonics that existed partially in dark matter space. Dimensional stability breach detected. Dark matter. Manipulation in progress. Initiating containment protocols. All vessels will cease reality distortion activities or face termination. Commander Vextar tried to argue with the ancient construct. "We are the Galactic Council. "We have authority in this system. These humans have violated cosmic law." The Dark Sentinel's response was to disable every reality anchor in the fleet with a single pulse of energy. The massive devices simply stopped working, their crystalline cores going dark as their power was drained away. "Dark matter technology detected in 12 human vessels," the Sentinel continued. "Threat level, moderate. Dimensional fractures spreading across local space-time. Initiating emergency repair procedures." Dr. Elena Rodriguez realized what was happening as she watched her instruments detect massive distortions throughout the solar system. The Phantom ships had been punching holes in reality itself every time they phased into dark matter space. The accumulated damage from years of testing and the recent battle was threatening to cause a cascade failure that could destroy entire star systems. "We broke something," she whispered to Nathan. "All those years of testing, all those phase jumps, we've been tearing holes in the fabric of space-time itself." The Dark Sentinels began working to repair the dimensional damage, their ancient technology sealing the cracks in reality that human dark matter experiments had created. But their presence changed everything about the battle. Suddenly, both humans and aliens found themselves facing powers that made their own technology look like stone tools. Major Kate Sullivan, her mind barely holding together, felt something impossible happening. Her consciousness, scattered across multiple realities by the dimensional collapse, was being gathered back together by forces she could not understand. The Dark Sentinels were not just repairing space-time, they were repairing the damage to the Wraith pilots' minds. "I can see them," she whispered, her voice carrying new strength. "The predecessors, they're not gone. They exist in dark matter space, and they're trying to help us understand what we've done." As ancient powers awakened and reality itself became a battlefield, humanity found itself at the center of a cosmic crisis that would determine not just their survival, but the stability of the entire galaxy. The price of their dark matter technology was becoming clear, and it was higher than anyone had ever imagined. The war for human freedom had become something far greater, a struggle between forces that existed beyond normal space and time, with the fate of reality itself hanging in the balance. The Dark Sentinels moved through space like living mountains, their ancient hulls reflecting starlight in patterns that seemed to show the history of the galaxy itself. More of them arrived every hour, emerging from hiding places between the stars where they had waited for 3 million years. Speaker Thexval watched from the council station as his mighty fleets became insignificant next to these cosmic guardians. His crystalline body had lost its bright glow, dimmed by fear and the realization that the Galactic Council was no longer the supreme power in space. "How many of them are there?" he asked his science officer. The floating geometric shape pulsed with nervous energy. "Our sensors detect over 200 Dark Sentinels throughout the galaxy, Speaker. They are converging on every location where dark matter experiments have taken place. Some are heading toward human space, others toward ancient battlefields, where the predecessors once fought. The largest Dark Sentinel, a construct the size of a small moon, positioned itself between the alien fleets and the dying human ghost ships. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons and the wisdom of a civilization that had transcended physical existence. "We are the guardians left behind by those who came before," the ancient machine said. "Our creators discovered the power of dark matter and used it to reshape reality itself. They learned too late that such power comes with a price that threatens all existence." Admiral Lisa Carter, still aboard the council station as part of the human delegation, listened to the Sentinel's words with growing understanding. Humanity had stumbled onto technology that could destroy the universe itself, and they had been using it without knowing the consequences. "The young species called humanity has rediscovered dark matter manipulation," the Sentinel continued. "They have created warriors who exist partially in dark space, but these warriors are burning out their minds and tearing holes in reality. This cannot continue." Major Kate Sullivan, her consciousness barely holding together in the cockpit of her dying ship, felt something impossible happening. The Dark Sentinel's power was reaching into her mind, gathering the scattered pieces of her thoughts and weaving them back together. But instead of returning her to normal human consciousness, something far stranger was occurring. "I can see them," she whispered, her voice carrying across both normal space and dark matter dimensions. The predecessors. They're still here, existing in dark space. They want to help us understand what we've become. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, monitoring from Earth, watched in amazement as Kate's brain patterns stabilized and then evolved into something entirely new. The Wraith pilot was not being healed. She was being transformed into something that could serve as a bridge between human understanding and cosmic forces beyond imagination. Captain Jake Morrison seized this moment of universal crisis to make a desperate proposal. He activated his ship's communication system and broadcast on all frequencies, reaching every alien vessel, every dark sentinel, and every human monitoring station. "This is Captain Morrison of Earth, speaking to all powers present," he said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was attempting. "Humanity offers to share all our dark matter research with the Galactic Council and the Dark Sentinels. We propose a joint effort to understand and control this technology safely, in exchange for recognition as an equal member of galactic civilization." The response came from multiple sources simultaneously. Speaker Thexval's crystalline form flared. With indignation, Commander Vextar hissed through his translator, and several other alien leaders began angry protests. But the Dark Sentinel's voice cut through all of them like a blade through silk. "The human proposal has merit," the ancient Guardian announced. "Their species has achieved in decades what took our creators millennia to understand. Their research, combined with our knowledge and the Council's resources, could prevent the dimensional collapse that threatens all reality." Dr. Elena Rodriguez found herself at the center of the most important scientific collaboration in galactic history. Within hours, alien scientists were arriving at her underground facility, bringing technologies that made human science look primitive. Feltharian crystal matrices could store dark matter safely, while Zephyrite energy manipulation could stabilize dimensional rifts. Working together, the combined team discovered that humanity's Wraith pilots had become something unique in the galaxy. Their consciousness existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them the perfect intermediaries between normal space and dark matter reality. Major Kate Sullivan became the first human to successfully communicate with the Darks, Sentinels on their own level. Her fragmented mind, scattered across dimensions by dark matter exposure, could understand concepts that existed outside normal space-time. Through her, humanity learned the true history of the galaxy. The predecessors didn't disappear, she explained to the assembled scientists and diplomats. They transcended physical existence and became part of dark matter space itself. They built the Sentinels to prevent other species from making the same mistakes they did. But they've been waiting for a species that could safely bridge both dimensions. The solution that emerged was both tragic and beautiful. The surviving Wraith pilots would merge permanently with the Dark Sentinels, becoming eternal guardians of dimensional stability. Their human perspective and emotional depth would transform the ancient machines from mere protective devices into something approaching true wisdom. "We volunteer," Major Kate Sullivan said, speaking for all the remaining ghost ship pilots. "We gave up our humanity to save our species. Now we'll give up our existence in normal space to save the galaxy itself." Captain Jake Morrison signed the Treaty of Dark Stars aboard the largest Dark Sentinel, with representatives from all 12 Council species watching. The agreement established Earth as the 13th member of the Galactic Council, with full rights and responsibilities. More importantly, it created the first truly cooperative research effort in galactic history, dedicated to understanding and safely using dimensional technology. The ceremony was held in a chamber that existed partially in both normal space and dark matter dimensions. Human delegates stood beside crystalline Veltharians, energy-based Zephyrites, and representatives from species that defied description. Above them all, the transformed Wraith pilots existed as bridges between realities. Their consciousness expanded beyond anything purely human, but retaining the core values that made humanity special. Admiral Lisa Carter accepted command of Terra Station, a joint human-alien facility built around the cosmic coordinates where the first Dark Sentinel had appeared. The station existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, serving as both a research center and a monitoring post for dimensional stability throughout the galaxy. From this day forward, she announced at the station's dedication ceremony, humanity takes its place not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners in the greatest endeavor any civilization has ever attempted. We will guard reality itself. The ghost ships were remembered as martyrs who saved not just humanity, but existence itself. Their sacrifice had earned humanity a place among the stars, not through conquest or superior technology, but through their willingness to give everything for both their species and the universe. In the final moments of the ceremony, Dr. Elena Rodriguez received a transmission that seemed to come from the spaces between dimensions. It was Major Kate Sullivan's voice, but changed, expanded, carrying harmonics that existed in dark matter space. "Tell them we found what we were looking for," the voice whispered across realities. "We wanted to reach the stars, and we did. Now, we are the stars, watching over all the children of light who will come after us." Humanity had shocked the galaxy with their dark matter warships, but in the end, they had done something far more impressive. They had transformed a potential cosmic disaster into the foundation for a new age of cooperation and understanding. The species that had been condemned as dangerous primitives had become the guardians of reality itself, their ghost warriors watching over the galaxy from the darkness between the stars. The war was over, but the real adventure was just beginning.
The Valari Collective had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across 100,000 worlds, and no species in the known galaxy dared to challenge their power. They were the oldest civilization, the most advanced, and the most feared. Their silver warships moved through space like predators, and wherever they went, other races bowed their heads and accepted their fate. This was the natural order of things. The strong ruled, and the weak served. The Valari had always been strong. Commander Zorath stood on the bridge of his observation vessel, the Endless Dawn, watching the data scroll across his display screens. He was old by Valari standards, nearly 400 years, and he had spent most of that time cataloging primitive civilizations. It was boring work, but necessary. The collective needed to know about every species in the galaxy, needed to track their development, needed to decide when they were ready to be brought into the fold. Most species accepted their place without resistance. Those that did not were quickly taught the error of their ways. The latest species on his list called themselves humans. They came from a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star on the edge of the Orion Arm. Zorath had been watching them for 50 years now, ever since their first radio signals had reached Valari listening posts. They were a curious species, violent and chaotic, always fighting among themselves. They had nearly destroyed their own world several times with their primitive weapons. Zorath had expected them to wipe themselves out long before they ever reached the stars, but they had surprised him. Somehow, despite their constant wars and their self-destructive tendencies, the humans had developed faster than light travel. It was crude technology, a clumsy warp drive that left visible ripples in subspace. But it worked. They had begun to spread beyond their home system, establishing colonies on nearby worlds, building stations in the darkness between stars. They were expanding, and the collective did not like it when primitive species expanded without permission. Zorath sent his report to the High Council and received his orders within days. A scout fleet would be dispatched to the human solar system. They would make contact, explain the situation, and give the humans a choice. They could join the collective peacefully, accepting their place as a labor caste, or they could be conquered by force. Most species chose the first option. The second was too terrible to contemplate. The scout fleet consisted of 12 warships, sleek silver vessels armed with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could withstand almost any attack. Zorath commanded from the Endless Dawn, watching as his fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system. The journey had taken 3 days, and his crews were eager to begin their work. This would be a simple mission, over within hours. The humans had no significant military presence in space, no weapons capable of threatening Valari warships, no experience in interstellar combat. They would see the fleet, understand their situation, and surrender. That was how it always went. But as the Valari ships began their approach toward the inner system, something unexpected happened. A single vessel emerged from behind the fourth planet. A rust-colored world, the humans called Mars. The ship was unlike anything Zorath had ever seen. It was ugly. All sharp angles and exposed weapon ports, painted in dark gray with white lettering on its hull. The lettering identified it as the USS Horizon, and it was broadcasting a warning on all frequencies. Zorath studied the vessel with growing curiosity. It was large for a human ship, nearly half the size of his own command vessel. But it looked crude and primitive. There were no elegant curves, no flowing lines, nothing that suggested advanced engineering. The hull was covered in what appeared to be armor plating. Thick slabs of metal bolted directly to the frame. The weapon ports were clearly visible. Dozens of them arranged along the ship's flanks and spine. It looked like something built for war. Pure and simple, with no consideration for beauty or efficiency. The warning message was simple. The human vessel identified itself and demanded that the Valari fleet halt its advance. It claimed that the solar system was sovereign human territory and that any unauthorized incursion would be considered an act of war. The message was delivered in broken Valari tradespeak, clearly translated by a computer, but the meaning was unmistakable. The humans were telling the collective to leave. Zorath almost laughed. The arrogance of these primitives was astounding. A single ship, alone against 12 Valari warships, and they were making demands. He opened a communication channel and explained the situation calmly and clearly. The Valari collective claimed this region of space. The humans had two choices. They could surrender peacefully and accept collective rule, or they could be destroyed. There was no third option. Zorath gave them one standard rotation to make their decision. The response came almost immediately. A human female appeared on his display screen, her face hard and her eyes cold. She identified herself as Captain Laura Mitchell, commanding officer of the USS Horizon. She was not young, perhaps middle-aged by human standards, with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes that suggested years of experience. She listened to Zorath's ultimatum without expression, and when he finished speaking, she was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something that others did not, the smile of a predator watching its prey walk into a trap. She spoke slowly and clearly, making sure that Zorath understood every word. She told him no. Zorath stared at the screen in disbelief. No species had ever refused a collective ultimatum. It simply was not done. He tried to explain again, tried to make her understand the hopelessness of her situation, but Captain Mitchell simply shook her head. She said that humanity did not bow to threats. She said that her people had fought too hard and sacrificed too much to surrender their freedom to anyone. She said that if the Valari wanted Earth, they would have to come and take it. Then she cut the communication channel. Zorath sat in silence for a long time, trying to understand what had just happened. His officers looked at him expectantly, waiting for orders. The humans had refused to surrender. That meant only one thing. They would have to be taught a lesson, shown the true power of the collective, made to understand their place in the galactic order. He gave the order to advance. The scout fleet moved forward, weapons charging, shields at full power. They would disable the human vessel, capture its crew, and proceed to Earth. This foolish captain and her single ship would be the first casualties of the war, a footnote in history, quickly forgotten. That was what Zorath believed. He was wrong. The Valari scout fleet moved toward the human warship in perfect formation. 12 silver vessels, their hulls gleaming in the light of the distant sun, their weapons charged and ready. Commander Zorath watched from the bridge of the endless dawn, confident in the outcome of this encounter. The humans had made their choice, and now they would face the consequences. It was almost sad. Really. Such a young species, so full of potential. And they had thrown it all away with their stubborn pride. He ordered a warning shot. There was no need to destroy the human vessel outright. The collective wanted prisoners, wanted to study these strange creatures, wanted to understand how they had developed space travel so quickly. A precision plasma burst would disable their engines without causing too much damage. The ship would be crippled, its crew would be captured, and the rest of humanity would learn from their example. The lead Valari cruiser fired. A bolt of superheated plasma streaked across the void, a brilliant blue streak against the blackness of space. It struck the USS Horizon directly amidships, exactly where the sensors indicated the main engine housing should be. The impact was spectacular, a flash of light that briefly outshone the distant stars. But something was wrong. The human ship did not break apart. It did not lose power. It did not even seem to shake from the impact. Zorath leaned forward in his command chair, staring at his sensor displays in confusion. The readings made no sense. The plasma bolt had struck the target. He had seen it with his own eyes, but the human vessel was completely undamaged. Its shields had absorbed the entire attack without any significant loss of power. That should have been impossible. The humans were primitives. They had only developed faster than light travel a few decades ago. Their technology should have been thousands of years behind the collective. Their shields should have failed instantly under Valari weapons fire. But the numbers on Zorath's display screens told a different story. The human shields were holding, and they were holding easily. On the bridge of the USS Horizon, Captain Laura Mitchell stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the tactical display with calm eyes. Her executive officer, Commander Jake Reyes, reported the shield status in a steady voice. Minimal degradation, well within acceptable parameters. The alien weapon had been powerful, he admitted, but nothing their defenses could not handle. Laura nodded slowly. She had expected this. The Valari were arrogant, accustomed to facing species that could not fight back. They had grown complacent over the centuries, relying on their reputation and their superior numbers rather than actual combat effectiveness. They had forgotten what it meant to face an enemy that was willing and able to hurt them. Humanity had not forgotten. Humanity had never had the luxury of forgetting. For thousands of years, humans had fought each other across the face of their world. They had developed weapons of terrible power, weapons capable of destroying cities, weapons capable of ending civilizations. They had stared into the abyss of their own extinction and somehow found the strength to pull back from the edge. And when they finally reached the stars, they had brought those lessons with them. The Horizon was not just a warship. It was the culmination of human military technology, the product of centuries of bloody conflict and hard-won knowledge. Its armor was made from advanced composites that could withstand impacts that would shatter ordinary steel. Its shields used principles of physics that the Valari had never even theorized. Its weapons were simple in concept but devastating in execution. Designed not to impress or intimidate but to destroy. Laura gave the order to return fire. The Horizon's main battery consisted of 12 magnetic accelerator cannons arranged along the ship's spine. Each cannon was capable of launching a 2-ton tungsten projectile at 3% the speed of light. At that velocity, the kinetic energy of a single round was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The Valari had never encountered kinetic weapons on this scale. Their shields were designed to absorb and disperse energy, to neutralize plasma bolts and laser beams. They had no defense against solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. The first volley struck the lead Valari cruiser before anyone on the alien ship even realized what was happening. The tungsten slugs punched through the energy shields as if they were not there, tore through the silver hull like paper, and exited the other side carrying fragments of the ship with them. The cruiser did not explode in any traditional sense. It simply came apart, its structure disintegrating under the catastrophic transfer of kinetic energy. Zorath watched in horror as one of his ships ceased to exist. The destruction was so sudden, so complete, that his mind struggled to process what he was seeing. One moment the cruiser had been there, intact and functional. The next moment, it was gone, replaced by an expanding cloud of debris and vapor. There had been 300 Valari on that ship. They were all dead now, killed in an instant by weapons that should not have existed. The other Valari commanders were screaming on the communication channels, demanding orders, begging for direction. Zorath tried to respond, tried to organize a counterattack, but the humans were not giving him time to think. The horizon continued firing, its railguns sending streams of depleted uranium into the fleeing Valari ships. Point defense lasers swatted down escape pods that strayed too close, denying even the possibility of survivors. It was a massacre. The Valari ships tried to run, tried to jump to hyperspace, tried to do anything to escape the relentless human assault, but the horizon was faster than it looked, its engines pushing it through space with unexpected acceleration. It chased down the fleeing vessels one by one, destroying them with methodical precision. There was no mercy in this attack, no hesitation. The humans were fighting to kill. In 4 minutes and 37 seconds, the battle was over. 11 Valari warships had been destroyed. Only the Endless Dawn remained intact, its engines damaged, its weapons offline, its crew cowering in terror. Commander Zorath sat in his command chair, surrounded by the wreckage of his fleet, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The human ship approached slowly, its weapons still trained on the crippled Valari vessel. Captain Mitchell appeared on the communication screen again, her face as calm as it had been before the battle. She told Zorath that she was sparing his ship for a reason. She needed someone to carry a message back to the Valari Collective, someone to tell them what had happened here today. The message was simple. Humanity was not prey. Humanity would not be conquered. Humanity would not surrender. If the Collective wanted war, they would have it. But the Valari should understand what they were getting into. They should understand that humans had been fighting since the day they first walked upright, that war was in their blood, that violence was their oldest tradition. Laura Mitchell smiled that cold smile again and told Zorath to run home and tell his masters what he had seen. Then she let him go. The Endless Dawn limped back to Valari space with its terrible news. Commander Zorath stood before the High Council in the great chamber on their homeworld, his body trembling as he described what he had witnessed. The holographic recordings played on the massive screens above him, showing the destruction of the scout fleet in brutal detail. The counselors watched in silence, their faces gray with shock, as 11 Valari warships were torn apart by human weapons. For 3 centuries, the High Council had not convened an emergency session. There had been no need. The Collective was supreme, unchallenged, unquestioned. Minor rebellions were crushed before they could spread. Rival powers were absorbed or eliminated. The galaxy had been at peace, the peace of absolute dominion, and the Valari had grown comfortable in their supremacy. Now that comfort was shattered, broken by a single primitive warship and its cold-eyed captain. The council debated for hours. Some argued that the recordings must be fake, that no primitive species could possess such technology, that this was some kind of elaborate deception. Others demanded immediate retaliation, a massive fleet to crush the humans and burn their worlds to ash. A few suggested caution, pointing out that they knew almost nothing about human military capabilities beyond this single engagement. Perhaps diplomacy was the better path. In the end, pride won over wisdom. The Valari had ruled for 12,000 years. They could not allow this insult to stand. If word spread that a young species had defeated a Valari scout fleet, other races might begin to question collective authority. The subject peoples might start thinking about rebellion. The entire structure of their empire could begin to crack. No, the humans had to be crushed. And they had to be crushed quickly and publicly. Admiral Cyrus received his orders directly from the High Council. He was the most decorated military commander in Valari history. A veteran of 100 campaigns, the architect of a dozen conquests. His battle group consisted of 40 warships, including 2 massive dreadnoughts that served as mobile command platforms. Each dreadnought was larger than any human vessel, bristling with weapons, protected by shields that could withstand sustained bombardment. Cyrus had never lost a battle. He did not intend to start now. The fleet assembled at the staging point and made the jump to human space. 3 days of hyperspace travel. 3 days for Cyrus to study the recordings from the scout fleet engagement. 3 days to develop his strategy. He was not a fool. He had seen what human weapons could do, and he respected their capability, but he also believed in numbers. 1 human ship had defeated 12 Valari vessels. 40 Valari ships, including 2 dreadnoughts, would overwhelm any defense the humans could mount. When the battle group emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system, they found the USS Horizon waiting for them. But the human vessel was no longer alone. 12 more warships had joined it, arranged in a defensive formation around a much larger ship that Cyrus did not recognize. His sensors identified it as a carrier, a vessel designed to launch and recover smaller attack craft. The humans called it the USS Resolute. Admiral Kate Navarro stood on the flag bridge of the Resolute, watching the Valari fleet appear on her tactical display. She was 51 years old, a career naval officer like Laura Mitchell, with the same cold determination in her eyes. She had been given command of the first carrier strike group 6 months ago, and she had spent every day since preparing for this moment. The aliens were coming, and humanity was ready. The strike group consisted of the Resolute and 12 escort vessels, including the Horizon under Captain Mitchell's command. Together they carried over 300 fighters, small single-pilot attack craft armed with missiles and guns. The fighters were the key to human strategy. The Valari had never developed comparable craft. Their doctrine relied entirely on capital ships, massive vessels that slugged it out at close range. They had no experience fighting against swarms of fast-moving attackers. Admiral Cyrus opened a communication channel and demanded that the humans surrender. His voice was calm and measured, the voice of someone who believed absolutely in his own superiority. He explained that resistance was futile, that the collective had weapons that could crack planets, that humanity had no hope of survival against the full might of Valari military power. He gave them 1 hour to stand down and submit to collective authority. Kate Navarro listened to the entire speech without interrupting. She had expected something like this. The aliens were arrogant, convinced of their own invincibility despite the evidence of the scout fleet disaster. They probably thought that engagement was a fluke, a lucky shot, something that could not be repeated. They were about to learn otherwise. When Cyrus finished speaking, Kate asked if he was done. He confirmed that he was. She nodded slowly, as if considering his words, and then she gave her response. She ordered all fighters to launch. The Resolute's hangar bays opened, and 300 human fighters poured into space like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. They formed up in squadrons, each squadron assigned to a specific target, each pilot knowing exactly what they needed to do. The Valari sensors tracked them but could not lock on. The fighters were too small, too fast, too numerous. The alien targeting systems were designed to track capital ships, not tiny craft that could change direction in an instant. Admiral Cyrus watched the swarm of human fighters approach and felt the first stirring of doubt. This was not how space battles were supposed to work. Capital ships fought capital ships. That was the natural order, the way things had been done for thousands of years. These tiny craft were an insult to proper military tradition. But tradition did not stop missiles. Tradition did not stop bullets. Tradition did not stop 300 determined pilots from tearing into his fleet with savage efficiency. The battle had begun. The human fighters hit the Valari fleet like a hammer striking glass. They came in waves, squadron after squadron, exploiting gaps in the alien formation that the enemy commanders did not even know existed. The Valari point defense systems tried to track them, tried to shoot them down, but the targeting algorithms were useless. They had been designed to engage missiles and torpedoes, not manned craft that could think and react and adapt in real time. Lieutenant Dan Cooper led the first attack run. He was 28 years old, a farm boy from Nebraska who had dreamed of flying since he was old enough to look up at the sky. Now he was diving through a storm of plasma fire, his fighter twisting and rolling to avoid enemy shots, his eyes fixed on the massive dreadnought that served as Admiral Cyrus's flagship. The ship was enormous, a mountain of silver metal bristling with weapons, but Dan was not afraid. He had trained for this. He was ready. His wingman, Lieutenant Nicole Park, flew just off his right wing. She was the best shot in the squadron, calm under pressure, with reflexes that bordered on superhuman. As they approached the dreadnought, she locked onto the main sensor array and fired. Her missile streaked across the void and struck the target dead center. The array exploded in a shower of sparks and debris, and suddenly the massive ship was partially blind. The dreadnought's commanders scrambled to compensate. They switched to backup sensors, tried to coordinate with other ships in the fleet, but the damage was done. Their ability to direct fleet defense had been crippled in a single strike. Other fighters were already moving in, targeting weapon batteries and shield emitters, slowly picking the giant apart. Meanwhile, the human capital ships advanced. The Horizon led the charge, Captain Mitchell pushing her vessel directly into the heart of the Valari formation. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency, each officer knowing exactly what to do, each system functioning at peak performance. They had drilled for this moment countless times, running simulations, war games, exercises. Now the real thing was here, and they were not going to fail. The Horizon's main guns opened fire on a Valari cruiser that strayed too close. The tungsten slugs punched through the alien shields and tore the ship apart from the inside. Secondary explosions rippled along the hull as power systems overloaded and fuel reserves ignited. The cruiser broke in half, both pieces tumbling away into the darkness, and the Horizon was already moving on to its next target. Admiral Cyrus watched his fleet dying around him and could not understand what was happening. His ships were supposed to be invincible. His tactics were supposed to be flawless. He had studied warfare for centuries, had written books on military strategy, had trained generations of Valari officers. How could primitives be defeating him? The answer was simple, but he was too proud to see it. The Valari had not fought a real war in over 1,000 years. Their military existed to intimidate, to crush rebellions before they started, to maintain order through the threat of overwhelming force. They had forgotten what it meant to face an enemy that could fight back, an enemy that was not afraid, an enemy that had something worth dying for. Humans had never forgotten. Every generation of humanity had known war. They had fought with spears and arrows, with guns and bombs, with weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash of light. They had seen the worst of what their species could do, and they had survived. They had learned, and now they were applying those lessons to a new kind of battlefield. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Valari fought with desperate courage, their commanders refusing to retreat even as their ships were destroyed around them. They managed to shoot down a few human fighters, managed to damage a couple of escort vessels, but it was not enough. The humans were too fast, too coordinated, too ruthless. They exploited every weakness, punished every mistake, showed no mercy to those who had come to enslave their world. Admiral Cyrus died when his flagship finally broke apart under concentrated fire from the Resolute. The dreadnought had taken dozens of hits, its shields failing section by section, its hull cracking under the relentless bombardment. In the end, a full salvo from the carrier's main batteries struck the reactor core, and the ship vanished in a brilliant flash of light. 3,000 Valari died in that moment, including the most celebrated admiral in their history. The second dreadnought tried to flee. Its commander ordered an emergency jump to hyperspace, desperate to escape the slaughter. But the human fighters were faster. A squadron led by Lieutenant Cooper targeted the hyperdrive systems, their missiles tearing through the engineering section and destroying the delicate machinery that made faster-than-light travel possible. The dreadnought was trapped, unable to run, and the human capital ships closed in for the kill. When the shooting finally stopped, the silence was deafening. 32 Valari warships drifted dead in space, their hulls torn open, their crews gone. The remaining 8 vessels fled in disarray, their commanders too shocked and terrified to maintain any kind of formation. They jumped to hyperspace the moment their drives were charged, not even bothering to recover escape pods or search for survivors. Admiral Kate Navarro surveyed the battlefield from the flag bridge of the Resolute. Debris fields stretched for thousands of kilometers, glittering in the light of distant stars. Bodies floated among the wreckage, Valari and human alike, united in death. She felt no joy in this victory, no satisfaction. War was not something to celebrate, but it was something humanity knew how to do. Human losses were light. 4 fighters had been destroyed, their pilots killed in action. No capital ships had been lost, though several had sustained damage that would require weeks of repair. It was a remarkable achievement. A victory that would echo through galactic history. Captain Mitchell brought the Horizon alongside the Resolute and opened a communication channel to Admiral Navarro. The two women looked at each other through the view screens, sharing a moment of quiet understanding. They had done what they set out to do. They had protected their home. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. But they both knew this was only the beginning. The news of the Battle of Proxima spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every species with access to interstellar communication heard the story within days. The mighty Valari Collective, rulers of 100,000 worlds, masters of the Orion Arm for 12,000 years, had been defeated by primitives. Not just defeated, but humiliated. 40 warships sent to crush a young species, and only 8 had returned. 2 dreadnoughts, the pride of the Valari Navy, had been destroyed. Their greatest admiral was dead. Their reputation for invincibility was shattered forever. The subject races of the collective watched the recordings in secret, passing them from ship to ship, from world to world, spreading the truth that the Valari had tried to suppress. Some wept with joy. Others began to whisper about possibilities that had seemed impossible just days before. If the humans could stand against the collective, perhaps others could too. Perhaps the age of Valari dominion was finally coming to an end. On the Valari homeworld, the High Council met in emergency session for the second time in a month. The mood was very different now. There were no more calls for war, no more demands for human blood. The councilors sat in stunned silence, their faces pale, their confidence broken. They had sent their best, and their best had failed. What could they possibly do now? Some argued for a massive mobilization, for gathering every ship in the collective and launching an overwhelming assault on human space. But the military advisors quickly put an end to that idea. The Valari fleet was large, yes, but it was spread thin across a vast empire. Pulling ships from patrol routes would leave dozens of systems undefended, and the subject races were already restless. A full mobilization might trigger the very rebellions they were trying to prevent. Others suggested developing new weapons, new technologies to counter human capabilities. But that would take years, perhaps decades. And there was no guarantee of success. The humans had achieved in 1 century what the Valari had not managed in 12,000 years. They had found ways to kill that no one else had ever imagined. Who knew what else they were capable of? In the end, the High Council chose the only path that remained open to them. They sent a diplomatic delegation to human space, carrying offers of peace. It was the first time in Valari history that they had sued for terms with a species they had intended to conquer. The humiliation was almost unbearable, but the alternative was worse. Captain Laura Mitchell received the delegation aboard the USS Horizon. She had been promoted to admiral in the weeks following the battle, given command of a new fleet being assembled to defend Earth. But she had asked to handle this meeting personally. She had started this war, and she wanted to be there when it ended. The Valari ambassador was an elderly female named Tara, one of the few counselors who had argued for caution from the beginning. She looked at Admiral Mitchell with something like respect in her ancient eyes. She had seen the recordings of the battle, had watched this human woman stand unflinching against impossible odds. Whatever else the humans might be, they were not cowards. The negotiations lasted 3 weeks. The humans demanded much, and the Valari had no choice but to agree. The collective would recognize human sovereignty over their entire solar system and the 3 nearest star systems. They would withdraw all military vessels from a buffer zone extending 50 light-years from Earth. They would release all enslaved species within their territory, allowing them to return to their homeworlds or seek refuge in human space. It was a harsh peace, but Tara accepted it. She understood that the alternative was continued war, and she knew that the collective could not afford that. The Empire was already beginning to crack. Rebellions were breaking out on a dozen worlds, inspired by the human example. The Valari needed peace, needed time to stabilize their crumbling dominion. Admiral Mitchell signed the treaty on behalf of humanity. She felt no triumph in this moment, no sense of victory. She had seen too much death, lost too many friends, carried too many burdens to celebrate, but she felt something like hope, For the first time in human history, her species had a place among the stars that no one could take away from them. In the months that followed, everything changed. The liberated species sent delegations to Earth, seeking alliances, offering friendship, asking for protection. They told stories of centuries under Valari rule, of families torn apart, of cultures destroyed, of hope slowly dying, until the humans had shown them that resistance was possible. They looked at humanity with something like awe. These strange creatures who had done what no one else had managed to do. Other species began to ask questions about humans, to study their history, to try to understand how such a young civilization had become so powerful. The answers were disturbing. Humans had spent their entire existence fighting each other. Their history was a long parade of wars, conquests, genocides, and atrocities. They had developed weapons capable of destroying their own world, and had come within moments of using them. They were violent, aggressive, and dangerous by nature. But there was another side to the story. Humans were also capable of incredible kindness, of sacrifice, of love that transcended all boundaries. They had built great civilizations, created beautiful art, explored the deepest mysteries of the universe. They had looked into the abyss of their own destruction and found the strength to step back. They were complicated creatures, full of contradictions, capable of both terrible evil and profound good. Admiral Mitchell understood this better than most. She knew what her species was capable of: the darkness and the light. She knew that humanity had not reached the stars because they were peaceful or enlightened. They had reached the stars because they were survivors, because they refused to die, because they fought for what they believed in, no matter the cost. She stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the dreadnought USS Vanguard, watching the first transports of liberated peoples departing for their homeworlds. Commander Jake Reyes stood at her side, now a captain himself, commanding one of the escort vessels. Lieutenant Dan Cooper had been promoted and given his own squadron. Lieutenant Nicole Park was teaching a new generation of pilots how to fight. They had won this war. But Mitchell knew that others would come. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers. Other empires would rise to challenge humanity. Other threats would emerge from the darkness between stars, but humanity would be ready. They had always been ready. Mitchell smiled as she watched the transport ships disappear into the distance. Humanity did not start fights, but they always finished them.